Dryness in the United States, slow planting in Brazil, and the market summarized here on Connected Farmer, your channel, to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we have had a week with the markets ending lower for corn and soybeans after 3 weeks of positive numbers. And we have had also reports of dryness in states like Ohio and Texas. What do you think is the impact? Do you think this information is all related, or what do you think is behind this market reaction?
Well, this week, early in the week here, we were kept kind of pushing hard up against some moving averages and previous highs and stuff like that because of the dryness that we had going on in the U.S. As you mentioned here in the Eastern Corn Belt, that includes Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and even in the Southwest there, Texas and Oklahoma. Uh, Definitely have turned dramatically different from where they were in July of this year on those from that standpoint. But I think the real factor that maybe showed up here finally on Friday was the fact that we've had quite a few forecast potential rains for the central and eastern parts of the Midwest in the past, but didn't really deliver over the last month or 6 weeks. And now the latest forecast still has some pretty good shower activity starting. Well, not so much here in Chicago today, but definitely on Sunday. So the that factor, I think, finally just prompted some people to take their lungs off for the weekend and see what happens with the rain activity. Right now, the projection is for a good inch or more in many parts of the area east of the Mississippi, and that definitely would be welcome. Nothing else, I think, just to uh, get a little tightness going on in some of these nearby harvest activity in that. And that's a real interesting twist. I don't know how much we're going to change our production numbers here. They've already been impacted by this August and September dryness, but right now at least it's the old classic. Well, if it's could rain, it might have an impact. I don't want to be involved, so they decided to take the weekend off and wait till what happens here with the rain event from Illinois eastward here on Sunday, Monday.
Yes, and another thing with a major impact on the market is the slow soybean planting in Brazil. And you think that is going to how is that going to develop in the next couple of weeks?
Well, right now, earlier this week, and I think it was in the market that issues in in the Amazon has really turned for the worst here. They're talking about the record drought and the two tributaries of the Amazon there that meet in Manaus were definitely running extremely low, below the previous levels, and that's an impacting factor here for a lot of stuff that's exported does move from that one tributary that goes west of Mato Grosso, and so that's the thing that makes it quite kind of interesting to say the least here. Now, to some extent, the amount of beans that have been planted in Brazil in September over the years has been erratic, and yet it doesn't make as big a difference. But we are now approaching October, and we really do need to see some progress being planted down there, because the other twist of it is that the northern areas, Mato Grosso, Goiás, and Minas Gerais, they plant a lot of corn after the soybean harvest up there. We had some controversy about that last year because we didn't get started planting the soybeans in aggressively here in October last year, and so that to some extent, I think may have impacted the amount of output of the second crop corn, which is really the major exporting corn in Brazil. It's not the first crop corn that's put in Paraná and Rio Grande do Sul. That's for the livestock producers in the southern parts of Brazil. But the big export supplies that are moved out of Brazil are really from the second crop corn that's planted after the bean uh, harvest. Now, if you don't get the beans in, then you don't get the corn out, and you also jeopardize the corn size from there. So that's really an interest, a major factor that could start to creep into these things, which would be putting more stress on the bean yields. And then also, right now, there's not a lot of optimism because of these low prices, by the way, they're talking about less than 1% expanded uh, Brazilian soybean plantings for the coming year, which is amazingly low. Over the years, we've had scenarios where it's low, but we always seem to do 2 to 4% or even 3 to 5% more just because of the productivity of the northern cirrhosis and that just is so tempting for people to go ahead and still plant some more soybeans. But the prices right now definitely are not in Brazil's favor at this point on expanded bean plantings. And at this point, even the corn, even if it's a second crop scenario, and now we don't get to plant it on a timely basis there, because they really like to have that corn in Mato Grosso uh, in the ground by February 15th. And that's really going to be interesting if we have delays after that, because like everything else, by the spring, uh, by April 15th and after, dryness in the wintertime could could end up impacting, excuse me, that would be the fall down in Brazil, kind of remembering the opposite situation from there. But it's really it's a longer term scenario that all needs to be balanced out. And once things get delayed, then everything gets out of kilter and things get into issues that can be important. But going into this last weekend, it wasn't anybody's mind. They decided they wanted to be on the sidelines waiting to see what this rain event in the US would turn out to be.
Yes, and we also had in Argentina lower levels of the Paraná River that make the shipments very slow at this point.
The whole place gets impacted down there when it gets dry. There's so much of the transportation issues or transportation facilities and the movement of grain in South America is barge and river type transportation. And you're exactly right. The Paraná River, goes out of Paraguay and then into Argentina. And most of the shipping comes out of the Paraná River there in either Rosario or in Buenos Aires. So everything gets slowed down. Just like the Mississippi, and to some extent, we've had that same issue happen in the U.S. in the past, and even starting to get there this year. But this recent hurricane that came up the Mississippi River did help the lower Mississippi's barge levels or transportation levels in the river for a bit. But right now, at least, the Argentinian situation also is a little dicey down there. They're not as under as big a stress right now. There has been some corn being planted out there, but most of that's in towards the Buenos Aires area. They did get an actual decent, 3/4 to an inch of rain here this last week in Buenos Aires province, but it didn't hit Cordoba or Santa Fe, and that's really where the corn and soybeans are planted, and that. And usually, what happens this time of year, we get I think there's been talk about 10 or so% of Argentinians' corn's already planted, but they plant corn, they plant some beans, then they really get through their wheat harvest, and then they start planting A lot of wheat beans, as they say in Argentina, and then they turn around and finish up with this another big batch of corn. Well, but way back in the spring there, March or so. Uh, well, I guess it's from there. So the Argentinian situation uh, maybe a little less crucial right now than I think it is in Brazil about getting their plantings moving as they normally like. Right now, dryness has impacted their spring seeding procedures, and in America has been what the finish of the crop is going to be and how those numbers come through on the October USDA production report.
Yeah, so what do you anticipate for the following week?
Well, the following week is still going to be chopping back and forth. We're going to see what kind of moisture we do get in that on this event here Sunday, Monday, and that going through the Midwest. The twist of it is that we're going to continue to hear about what's going on uh, in the fields at this point. Right now, at least, the excuse me. It turns up that the early results that we're getting depends on a little bit where you get your source on things. Uh, there's always going to be a certain amount of people that are out there racing ahead of the crowd and wanting to talk about how great their crop is, while there's other people out there that are not in a big rush to expand what say what they're getting in their fields. Right now, at least, there's some pretty positive kind of numbers coming out of some uh, on corn at this point. Uh, Even the beans, there's some 60s and 70s. I even heard some higher numbers than that on yields so far. But at this point, we're still. I think this coming week's harvest progress numbers will still be in the early teens on things here as we go forward on things. And on the corn side, God, there's some people out there, the infamous 300 bushel yield is always a goal of all corn producers, and there's always somebody out there says they got some. So I don't know that we're seeing that the overall, that's just the typical kind of things we get early in a harvest here on the yield side of things. So, but we're going to continue after we uh, have this rain event as to what might be coming up here on some important numbers at the end of the month here. Sometimes they're influential, sometimes they're not. The the USDA's small grains report we put out on September 30th. And so kind of perusing the ideas of what's going on out there for that numbers. They seem to be kind of in two different camps. You got the 15 to 20 million increase levels on overall wheat and you have the other side that's looking at maybe 15 or 20 million less. When you think about it, the overall production in the U.S. is important, but probably not going to be very influential when you get down to it, because of the fact that the world is still going to be watching closely the Black Sea and what happens there. The Russians have been a pretty positive or aggressive type of marketers of their wheat, and I think that's kept kind of the seasonal pop here a little under control here on the wheat side of things. But they have some issues over there about dryness too. Europe had a lackluster, poor crop. There is some optimism about Australia having a good crop. There's even some talk about the Argentinian crop, but right now, I think that the optimism about Argentina's kind of been muted because of the dryness that's going on down there. So that's something that's in the future here. We'll get more ideas about that. The USDA will also put out their September 1st stocks reports, the kind of final ones in corn and soybeans. The ideas on that one, by the way, it's always cautionary when you're dealing with the corn markets and on how much exports there might be going on and things like that. This recent summer decline in prices sometimes prompts the importers to kind of slow down their actual demands for corn and that. So I kind of feel like there might be a 30 million adjustment in corn exports, which would bump up our carryover stock to 1.84. But that's not the overall. The market's still going to be looking at new crop. Similar situation in beans. The late earlier on the November NOPA crush came in about 10 million to 15 million less than expected on their August crush. And so I think that's going to potentially bump up the carryover stock 10 or 15 million too. But those numbers are really not in play until we get to the end of the month, but they're important numbers longer than that. But the overall situation is going to continue to be how the harvest is going, what kind of reports we get from the country and that. And also internationally, we got to keep a close eye on what's going on in South America and how they're trying to get their spring plantings up and going. And that's highly important this time of year. But the one thing is kind of back in the background of this thing, these are lower prices. So the producers in the U.S. are kind of hunkered down and really, unless there's some kind of dynamic enthusiasm here in the corn and soybeans and wheat prices, they're kind of anticipating that they're going to hang in here till later this fall before they make any marketing. So that's, if you want some corn from the producers, you probably have to, or soybeans, you probably need to bounce the market a little bit stronger than it has been. We're really close on some of these overhead resistance levels and also moving averages. So that'll be something to continue to watch over the next couple weeks.
All right. Thank you very much.
Have a good day.